Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Washington Courts Report, the official podcast of the Administrative Office of the Courts. For today's episode, I sat down and interviewed program analyst for the AOC, Lauren Pilnick, and survivor advocate Jamie Sullivan on the role they played in the launch of the state's Hope Card program, which launched on January 1st of this year. The Hope Card program makes it easier for individuals with full civil protection orders to carry important details about their orders. These wallet-sized, durable cards include the information law enforcement needs to verify a protection order if a violation occurs. Hope cards are a simpler way to inform police, employers, schools, or landlords about your protection order and are completely free. This interview took place on February 13th, and I think was a productive conversation. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your relation to the Hope Card program? And we'll start with Lauren, a program analyst at the AOC for it.
Sure. So I have been working for and with survivors of sexual and domestic violence for over 20 years. And when I saw this opportunity at the administrative office of the courts to work with civil protection orders and create this program, I was just so excited to be able to be a part of something so cutting edge and so survivor centered. And so I've been now with the AOC since last February, so just over a year. And to be able to have churned this out in less than a year with the help of so many partners and colleagues has been so exciting to know that these cards are already in people's hands. So really, really honored to be a part of this program.
Yeah, it's been a long journey just to get those cards out, and you really are sort of the person processing these requests and getting them out, right?
Yes, eventually we hope to be able to transition to some other collaborators here at the AOC, but it has really kind of been on my desk right now just to ensure that we're working through, any bugs and making sure things are really as consistent and quality controlled as possible, especially in these first early months post-launch.
Okay, and before we dive into really what is a Hope Card and what the program's about, I want a chance to introduce the other person who really got the ball rolling on this. Jamie, you want to tell a little bit about yourself and your relation to the program?
Sure. So like was said, I'm a high school English teacher in Thurston County, and I am the protected party on a permanent order of protection for domestic violence stalking. I have been since my order was put in place in 2018 in Thurston County Superior Court, or the civil court, after my stalker was incarcerated. So I've held a order of protection for a couple of years. I got involved in some survivor-led networks, kind of self-help and also information sharing networks. And in one of those, it was an online group. Somebody, I think from the state of Montana, mentioned that they had a Hope Card. And people started asking about that program. And it seemed like such a common sense fix for the problem of having to carry around an order of protection, potentially for many years, just to be able to have the information on hand should you have to contact law enforcement. So I had held one of these orders for, by the time I reached out to Representative Griffey's office, I think 3 years, 4 years by then. And like many people, I had at first been really good about carrying my order. And then there were many, many times where carrying my order was just not very practical, whether I was going for a run or just going outside quickly. And when I heard about the Hope Card program, which had been started in, I think, the Crow Nation tribal court system, and then spread later on to the state of Montana, and then I thought, this makes so much sense. Does Washington have this? So then I started looking, realized we did not have the Hope Card program in our state. And it really just started with an email to Representative Griffey's office. I had previously heard during a candidate forum, Representative Griffey talk about his wife being a survivor of some, different types of family abuse and violence. And I knew he was a strong advocate. And I reached out to him. He then reached out to Representative Lauren Davis, and it was just this really great bipartisan partnership that I think made Hope Card really get, I don't want to say fast tracked through the process, but it gave it a really smooth, no real resistance movement through all the various committees. So in January of 2023, emailed Representative Griffey saying, hey, there's this program in several other states called Hope Card. Would you be interested in helping get it started in Washington? And I was at a teaching conference. I just fired it off, didn't think much of it because I didn't think I would get a response anytime soon. They reached back out to me within a day and said, not only are we interested in advocating for this, but we want to sponsor it. And that was great news. I really didn't think it would be simply that easy. And from then on, it was a pretty quick process. And I think it started in the House and landed in the Public Safety Committee. I went and spoke at that. And I'm not a politician. I was doing a lot of cold calling at that point. I reached out to Safe Place. I reached out to state coalitions on domestic violence. I was just like emailing people with no connections or anything. And one of the first people who actually not only expressed interest, but said, yes, I'll show up in person and testify, was Sheriff Derek Sanders, Sheriff of Thurston County. So that's how it got started. And within that same legislative session, it passed in every committee. There were no votes, no dissensions. It made it through with full bipartisan approval and support. So it was signed into law that May in 2023.
Yeah, and I just love the journey of that. It really just shows like how much one concerned citizen with lived experience can, impact the state as a whole and impact and help the lives of a lot of people. That was my big takeaway from the story. And a couple of quick facts for our viewers. A few names that will probably be referenced throughout this are Representative Lauren Davis, Representative Dan Griffey, and Sheriff Sanders.
Yes.
They were all at the January 16th launch of the Hope Card program, which was streamed on TVW, and I highly recommend anyone interested to watch it. It's a great ceremony, really a lot of hard work coming to fruition, and I will link it in the show description as well. So one quick thing is I believe Washington is actually the 10th state, right? Lauren, am I good on that one?
10th jurisdiction. One of
10th?
those is one lone county in the state of Pennsylvania that has an automatic issuance Hope Card program. So we are the 10th jurisdiction. Yes.
Okay, good for that Massachusetts county. Hey, better late than never, though, right?
Absolutely.
That is wonderful. Lauren, will you tell us a little bit about what does Washington's program look like and what does your current work involve with the program?
Absolutely. So, I mean, Hope Cards are available to folks with civil protection orders. And what a Hope Card is a durable, laminated, wallet-sized card, same size as a driver's license. It's designed so that survivors don't need to carry this bulky, impractical packet like Jamie talked about. These packets of protection orders are typically, they're at minimum 12 pages. They can range as large as 18 pages long. It's just not a practical thing to have on your person at all times. And if I may, I've heard Jamie explain that, kind of liken that to a ball and chain before. It's just not something you look forward to grabbing before you leave the house. So when it's converted into this wallet-sized indicator of that underlying protection order, we then have learned from other jurisdictions who have come before us in establishing Hope Card programs that survivors are then more likely to have their order information with them. And that then connects to hopefully increasing the likelihood of those orders being enforced when there is a violation. And that really is a key goal of this legislation, so that survivors can have their orders enforced. And both Representative Griffey and Davis have been really vocal about, what good is a protection order if we can't get it enforced. So having a card, will hopefully increase the likelihood of that. And that's something we hope to be able to evaluate as the program kind of gets its legs and we get more time under our belt and work with researchers to be able to track those case numbers and see if there has been an increase in enforcement after having those hope cards issued.
Yeah, and I remember that was one of my big takeaways. It was almost hard to believe where it's like, oh, 12 to 18 pages, like just to get it enforced. I feel like there's a
Right.
misconception or protection, maybe more colloquially, restraining orders, some people think of them as, is that it's just like one piece of paper you kind of wave around and it's a magic shield. Is like that was not exactly what I thought, but I think that is sort of a misconception that exists out there. And it's like, no, the work isn't done when the protection orders are there, and this card really helps reduce the load. Jamie, your work did not stop. Lauren, your too. The program still had to be developed. That was really the beginning of your, at least Lauren's work, and maybe a second step of Jamie's. Would starting with maybe Jamie, and then we could jump into Lauren. What did your input and development of the program look like? How did you get this, on time, in budget, with not a huge staff?
Well, so one of my misconceptions was how the speed at which the political process works once a bill is passed into law. And one thing that I think the court clerks had a concern about was the speed of implementation. So a concession was made that the opening date or the launch date would be moved up. It was passed in spring of 2023, and they set the date of launch for January 1st, 2025. And I learned a lot about the different barriers about that court clerks had concerns about with having the equipment, having the ability, just the capability to process the requests. So I think that there was a lot of behind the scenes work that had to happen that I was not really a part of, just how to logistically pull this off. And I think that Lauren could probably better speak to that side of things.
Of course, Lauren.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I started February 1st of 2024. So I had less than a year upon
Wow.
being hired and starting at the AOC to figure this thing out. And I will say, thankfully, did not know what I was in for. I did not realize just how complex it would be and what some of these barriers might be, that we would find in our way toward implementation. I think first and foremost, there's also an assumption about protection orders that once you have one, every court and every law enforcement agency just miraculously, magically has access to all of that information, including the administrative office of the courts. And unfortunately, like none of that is true. So we don't have access here at the AOC to all scans of protection orders. What we do have access to is many of the data elements that are entered into case management systems by those individual courts. So kind of learning that and implementing a program where there is not a unified court system and there's not, let's say, a statewide, protection order repository where all this information lives, the hill was a little bit steeper to climb there and figure out how we were going to be able to pull all of the data that we did need to be able to populate that information onto a card. So really figuring out what those data exchanges were, what we do have access to, and kind of comparing that to what was being legislatively asked of us in implementing this program. And like Jamie said, there's certainly resource constraints at the court level as well as at the AOC. And so kind of figuring the way around those things. And so we did not kind of push this to each court to implement individually. Not only was that a resource issue, honestly, the main reason behind centralizing the program here at the AOC was to be able to make it reliable, consistent, control the quality of information and data being presented on those cards, and have one centralized source of information for the program and its development. So that, it took months. I mean, in those early stages, asking such kind of elementary questions about what access we have and how to pull that and what would be possible. So I think back to some of those early conversations and things that we were asking about and trying to design into or out of the program, and how we would do that. And truly, my first few months working here at the AOC, people would hear my title of Hope Card Program Coordinator, and it was just this exasperated kind of sighs of like, wow, I have no idea how you're going to do that. I heard about that program. And these were people who knew these systems better than me, a newly hired, employee. So really figuring out how we were going to do that was no small feat. And it's because we have such a talented and brilliant team, so many people, 2 dozens of people, even here at the AOC working on this program, not even yet mentioning all of our stakeholders and collaborators across the state who, as recently as this week, are continuing to weigh in and give us input on how we address different elements of the program, and also kind of future proof it and think about expansion down the line. So it was a lot to kind of synthesize and try to figure out how we were going to make this happen with the resources that we have and in the timeline that we have. And we were able to do it, and we got cards in people's hands on day one.
And that's just beautiful. And can I ask, how has the first month post-launch been going?
First month post launch has been amazing. So we launched, as we said, on January 1st, 2025. That is a federal holiday, but even still, on that first day, we received our first requests across the state for Hope Cards. As of today, which is February 13th, 2025, we have already issued on 160 cases.
Nice.
We have issued 433 cards on those 160 cases. And that represents a total of about 209 requests. About 32 of those had to be denied, none for administrative reasons. Those are due to ineligibility. Folks who requested on orders that were expired or were a part of a criminal case, which are not yet eligible, or a restraining order, which is a different type of protective order in Washington, which is also not yet eligible for Hope Cards. So when we think about this, it's really only been 30 business days since we launched. Those are numbers that I'm incredibly proud of, and we've been hearing from program participants as well as stakeholders and partners across the state about how they've been hearing about things.
So I think there is a misconception with state legislation where it's like, oh yes, this needs to help like thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But like that to me, that is like nearly 200 people's lives who are hopefully significantly less stressful because they have these cards. And this program is like in perpetuity to a certain extent, right? Like this is now something that exists in the state. So there is sort of a countless number of people because like it also gives peace of mind to these people's friends, their families who might not have protection orders themselves, but absolutely like want their people they care about to be safe and protected. So, Lauren, starting with you and then maybe going to Jamie, do you have any anecdotes to share about sort of the power of these hope cards and how they help people?
Absolutely. We already know, having one of the things that we've adopted in our program is we automatically issue one card for each protected party listed on the order plus a spare card. And that, again, keeping the survivor at the center, hopefully helps to streamline their requests and so that they have enough cards if they want to provide one to their child's school or what have you, whatever the case may be. But even in this just less than first month and a half of the program being launched, seen multiple requests for Hope Cards, actually originating from teenage protected parties on the orders, which we found interesting, and we were happy that they had found their way to the website. We, of course, have seen participants who are also address confidentiality program participants, both within Washington state as well as other states. And we know that just from their mailing addresses where we're mailing their Hope Cards that they've requested. We heard from one survivor who was listening to the radio and heard a brief interview that was featured with Representative Griffey, and that's how she learned about the Hope Card program. And what she told me was, I was previously carrying a laptop bag everywhere I went so that I could have all of my orders paperwork on me, and I no longer will have to do that. So this is definitely reaching people, and this is, we're concurrently just rolling out our posters and what we're calling takeaway cards for folks in the courts to be able to take, after a hearing or when they're going in for another appointment. So this information is just starting to really get out to the courts in a really visible way, and we're already having this kind of turnout and people saying that this is changing their lives, to be able to have this so accessible where they can just put it in their phone case or in their wallet, things that they're already not leaving the house without, and to just have that peace of mind where it doesn't take up more brain space. I know if I've got my phone, I keep it in my phone case, I'm good. I don't have to think about it anymore, and I just have it there. That freeing up of that brain space, so many survivors report that as being just another measure of freedom, safety, and healing.
And yeah, and before I hand it off to Jamie, I just think that's such a valuable sort of lesson on like the power of having someone like you, a passionate staff member with lived experience, that these aren't just becoming numbers and forms to process, that you understand that there's real stories and real people behind each and every one of these. And one of these real
Absolutely.
people is on the call with us. Jamie Sullivan, almost 2 years exactly after you made that first email or call to Reps Griffey's office, you were handed the very first Hope card at an official press conference. Can
I
you tell
was
us a little bit about how that felt and maybe some of your anecdotes?
sure. I actually have a copy because Lauren was nice enough to furnish me with a couple of replacement copies. So I've got my copy right here. Boy, I had a lot of mixed feelings. It felt bittersweet because nobody wants to have an order of protection in the first place. But having a ceremony and getting that card issued to me was just the culmination of a lot of work and advocacy that I went in not knowing what I was doing. And it ended up being a really powerful and transformative and honestly a healing experience. Um, After, whether it's a sexual assault, stalking, domestic violence, or intimate partner violence, there's a lot of trauma behind every single card. There's a lot of stress, a lot of fear behind every single card. And when somebody files to have a permanent order of protection, it's an act of faith and trust in the court system that we can access these ways of protecting ourselves. So it is an act of faith. And now being able to see it, this whole project come about in a way that can help other people is awesome. So I was very honored. I was very humbled by the ceremony, the ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was very moving to have it given to me by retired Judge Alf, who I believe was the first judge in Thurston County to grant me my order of protection. I think he did that during the criminal trial. So impactful. It was very special to me. And I think that the numbers will start to see it grow, and that's just standard operating procedure. When every victim advocate knows and is able to communicate to every person who receives their order that, hey, here you go. Here's a wallet-sized card with the scannable code on it. It'll just become common knowledge that you can get your order on a card. Right now, almost nobody knows about it yet. I mean, so that's where all of this work is coming into play. I was just talking to a student last week, actually, and this is a student that has just been through a considerably, traumatic and scary family situation. And the student now has an order she was just granted an order of protection against a parent and a permanent order. And it was the morning before school. There's nobody else in the classroom. She's just unpacking her stuff. And I asked her, how things are going. She updated me about her family situation a little bit. And then she said that she has this order of protection that she was just given. And she was kind of complaining about having to carry all these papers around. And I said, well, actually, did you know that you can get it? And I showed her a card and what it looks like. And she said she was so surprised and so relieved that she could get her order on a card. And this was just one student of mine. And these stories are everywhere. I have many students with protective orders, and I have over the years. So for a teenager, for somebody who doesn't carry a purse that they can have a packet of papers on, it's really, really helpful to be able to, like Lauren said, put it in the back of your phone case or something, and know that at any time, if you need to contact law enforcement, you can let them know, hey, this is a valid order. Here's the case number. Everything you need to know is printed on the card. And it feels like an extra layer of safety.
Yeah, and that's why I think I love the name Hope Card so much because each of these, stories is, an awful event, traumatizing event that happened to someone. But these little cards is a reminder, it's like, hey, there are good people out there fighting for you. At least that's how I view it. And it is really that sliver of hope in some awful, bleak situations. One thing I wanted to give both chance to chime in on is, the Hope Card program isn't done developing. It's still in its infancy, as we've described. Are there any things that are on the high priority list, both for Jamie, you as an advocate, and Lauren, you as the program analyst?
Yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity for our program to expand. And we've said, even pre-launch, that this is just our first iteration. This is our starting point. We want to get this, as smooth as we possibly can, and then open this option up to more people. And if there are ways to make it even more survivor centered and even easier for folks to become participants in the program, that's what we're aiming to do. We know on the horizon that Representative Griffey is hoping in the 2026 session to sponsor a bill that would expand eligibility for the Hope Card program, which would give us a chance, like I said, to work out bugs, really get the technology where we need it to be before we expand to criminal no contact orders or NCOs. Those far outnumber civil protection orders by 4 to 6 times, and they change much more frequently. And so this is a great starting point where we're at right now for the 5 main types of civil protection orders. But certainly, I think that's an area that that we're all being, looking at and being called to expand to. And I think there are other capabilities that are on our dream list that we're trying to find ways to be able to implement to have more robust information available. The cards still always need to be verified by law enforcement the same exact way that a paper order would be verified upon a call for service in the case of a potential violation. So all of that is already built in. There's already mechanisms in place. But if there's ways to make this easier, those are certainly places that we're looking to expand. But before that, we've actually already asked in this legislative session, and it's such a dirty word right now in a budget shortfall, but we have asked for a little bit more funding so that we can translate our materials into as many languages as our funds would allow. We hope to be able to, even in this first iteration, be able to offer program materials in multiple languages, anywhere from 5 to 12 to as many as 20 different languages, and have the most frequently used languages really most accessible. So there's another state that has the letter that accompanies a mailing of the Hope Card. They have it on one side in English and on the other side in Spanish. That's something that we're hoping to implement as soon as possible, as well as getting the request form itself translated, and so on. So there's lots of ways that we're looking at right now, as well as further down the road with our legislative partners, to be able to expand the program and not only reach more people, but make this more meaningful for more people as soon as we can. So that's something that is definitely already in the works.
Yeah, that's so exciting that, absolutely hitting the ground running. And Jamie, you're a little bit less of the nuts and bolts but if there's nothing specific, maybe what you want to see the program become or evolve into, what would you like anyway?
I would like more information that is geared towards a younger, like 25 and under audience. I was just having a conversation today with my students about what social media platform they're most that they use most frequently and that they would be able to get messaging, news sources, um, important messages on, and they all said Instagram. So I think that having, some materials that are kind of like tailor made for Instagram, short, short kind of like, streams of information that you can look at and kind of grasp what you're looking at and what Hope Card is and how it can help you in like 15 seconds, and then share that out to your peer group or to anybody else. So I also think that schools are a great source of getting information out to people who hold permanent orders of protection. Um, my my coworkers down in the counseling center, they said that they have files of every family that has a valid order of protection in our school, and they are excited about the ability to just send letters out or emails out to all of those families to let them know, hey, you and your kids can get your orders on cards now. So I think that that's a next. I know that Lauren's worked a lot with through AOC with court clerks and everything, but being able to look at who are we not, what I guess target audience have we not um, tapped into yet and pushed information out to yet. And I think that, people who are in that 25 and under age group are most frequently online. They're going to get information online. They're going to be able to you really easily like go to a website and plug in some information to get their Hope Card. I don't know if it's possible to, I mean, in the future to have all of this on your phone, similar to how people have their a lot of people keep their insurance, their proof of insurance
Right.
on their phones. Yeah, I don't know the feasibility of that, but of course it's an idea. So.
Absolutely, Jamie. You took the words out of my mouth. I was, as soon as I started hearing you answer, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't say yet. We've really been looking at ways to implement a digital card. And that's something that we're definitely looking toward, and hope that when we do get another bill sponsored having to do with the Hope Card, that even just one sentence in there that says that whether a protection order, whether an indicator of a protection order is shown in its full paper form, in a card form, or a digital form, they all will be accepted as indicators of that underlying protection order. That's
Mhm.
something that we're already, pushing for, because whether or not we issue digital cards, people are going to take pictures of them and save a copy in
Right,
their
of
photos, right?
course.
Like I do that. I know many people do that, and they have just a folder on their phone of those things that they would need to reach for most frequently. So we're hoping to get that, recognized as soon as possible. But we also hope that in the meantime, that would still be accepted, a photo of the card, because again, it still always needs to be verified and validated by law enforcement. So there would really be, no additional risk, we feel, to accepting a copy of that in the meantime.
Yeah, and one thing that I really appreciate about the design of the card, and I love that, Lauren, I really appreciate when you gave me an opportunity to give some feedback about the design of the card. This might seem like a really minor detail, but I really like how the restrained party, how the person who I have this order against, how his name is on the back of the card. So when it sits in my wallet, I don't have to see that name, how it just looks like any other piece of identification unless I take it out. So again, that's just a detail, but it is something that I do appreciate, as after an experience of any of the various kinds of trauma that brings about these orders. You want to get back to normal life and not be constantly reminded that this thing happened, or that these events maybe keep on reoccurring. That, and I think that one of the areas of feedback that I remember hearing about, Lauren, maybe you could, maybe you know what I'm talking about here, but it was from the State Police Chiefs Association, or they were an organization that did write in and support. I believe that they said, or maybe I'm thinking about an organization for officers in another state, that having some kind of weapons indicator on the card would, like, moving forward, looking at what else could be on here that would be really important or potentially useful. So yeah, this is it's a work in progress. It's evolving, but there's such a great team with Lauren and AOC, and the co-sponsors of the bill, and everybody else who supported it.
Yeah. And one thing that's so important, I remember Sheriff Sanders at the press conference talked about, it's not just for, the holders of protection. Domestic violence calls are the most dangerous calls for police officers as well. And, statistics back that up. So I think that was a wonderful note to end on. But we'll starting with Lauren. Is there anyone you want to shout out, or last messages you want to leave off with?
If I shout out by name, we're going to extend this by about 10 minutes. So please
Okay.
go watch the TVW link. I do shout out even you, Patrick,
Appreciate
for
that.
helping us really spread the word. So just shouting out the whole team. And if I may plug the website, it's courts.wa.gov/hope card. And that is where the digital request form is. You can also print that out and mail that in if you prefer or need to do it that way. But it's just, I think it takes about 15 seconds to submit a request. You just need your case number, the issuing court, and where you want it mailed.
That's beautiful. And we'll link those in the webpage for the show and the YouTube description as well. And Jamie, anything you'd like to leave us off on?
No, thank you. I'm just really appreciative of Lauren. You've done a fantastic job launching this. I'm just really in awe of you. And thank you, Patrick, for your time. You guys have a great team at the AOC, really great people. So I appreciate that this is in your hands.
No, thank you so much. And feel lucky to work at the AOC. And I just want to leave off on this message is, in the middle of winter, this article really, and covering this story, really helped keep me going. That's like, there is just a lot of beautiful people out there doing good work, just wanting to help others. And I appreciate that and respect both of you so much. So with that, we'll sign off this episode. Thanks for coming on the show, you two.